How should governance work in a well-oiled PMO?
I think the PMO should really be responsible for outlining good quality governance processes. So, what are the right processes to have in place to manage our portfolio, our programs, our prioritization, etc.? The key for me is going back to my mantra is keeping things simple. It's very easy to overcomplicate governance and end up sort of tying the organization up in knots. So when it comes to portfolio reviews or program steering groups, the thing that is really important is really sitting down and running through what are the outcomes that governance meeting is trying to achieve. What is a good set of outcomes? Is it really spending 2 hours of senior leadership time and maybe 14, 15 people to sit down and go through where we are on the top 6 programs? What's the current status? You can do that by reading a report. That is not governance, that's report tracking. And so I think where the PMO has a responsibility, a good, effective PMO will say, no, that's not what steercos are about. We're going to have steering boards that are there to take key decisions and to mitigate risks on the program and to surface escalations on the program. And we're not going to have 14 people because 14 people is just too much of a crowd. And it's almost certain that at least 10 of those 14 people, maybe 9 or 8, will be adding absolutely no value to the conversation at all. So what you're doing is you're tying up expensive leadership time around a boardroom table for 2 hours once every month, which is unnecessary. And I'm sure they can do far more valuable things. If it's about taking key decisions, whether it's at the program level or the portfolio level, get the right people in the room. Be clear about what the terms of reference are for the governance meeting. And the PMO needs to feed a structure, a framework that delivers those outcomes for that particular governance meeting, and also feed the format that they can work with. So, for instance, I often see slides that have been produced for governance meetings. And what I see time and time again is wordy, texty slides that are basically outlining what the program manager or the portfolio manager wants to talk about. Well, my sort of challenge on that is I don't believe one person, whether you've got 5 people in the room or 14 people in the room, I don't believe one person is going to read one word of that text on a screen on the wall. They're not going to read it. That's not what they're there to do. That's what you do with a report. What they're going to do is they're going to engage in the conversation around the key issues, the risks that are there, the mitigations, etc. And actually, in many cases, a good governance meeting is almost judged by the quality of the discussion. It is definitely not judged by the quality of the slide that's on the screen. So reduce the text, concentrate on driving an agenda that suits the time you've got and the people you've got in the room, get the right people in the room to take those key decisions, and then manage that process throughout the annual cycle of the portfolio. Really good quality governance. It's such a big opportunity and it costs nothing. It's free of charge.
And how do you arrive at the right level of governance?
It's a good question, and it does slightly vary with different factors. So slightly varies based on the organization itself and the culture of the organization. It also slightly varies based on the characteristics of the leadership team. So, if they are very controlling, I actually do a piece of work with executive teams that plots where each member of the executive team sits in relation to leading programs, change programs. And it's quite interesting because it's relatively subjective. We don't try and make it too scientific. But what we do is we interview various people, project managers and program managers that have worked for these key sponsors or stakeholders or whatever. And we ask them how it was working with them. We plot a view of the whole leadership team. What we're plotting is people who are very strong controllers versus people who are very strong communicators. And what we're looking for is clusters, because clusters demonstrate a cultural characteristic which is wider than one individual. If you've got lots of controllers, then you probably will have a very structured, controlling governance environment. Now, the danger there is it becomes too controlling and it becomes quite autocratic. And that's when sort of leadership by fear starts to happen within governance meetings, which is not ideal. But equally, if you have too many people on the communication side, it's all a bit fluffy, and you end up with 15 people attending governance meetings, and it's all very nice and talking about where the latest programs got to and not really moving anything forwards. And actually what we're looking for is what's the optimum, and also we want to see a bit of a mix of communicators and controllers, because when you get that mix, you're likely to have a more stable governance structure that probably is more effective. It slightly depends, I think, Paul. It slightly differs from one organization to the next. For me, again, good governance is about simple, fitting the culture of the organization and about moving things forwards. It's not about where are we today. It's about what do we have to do as a group to help move this program or this portfolio forwards.